What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we have some massive news. So this is the first big patch for Outriders, and this one is focusing on fixing quite a bit. We're talking crashes, matchmaking issues, crossplay issues. There's a community appreciation package coming for all of us who survived launch week, so we're going to figure out what comes with that package. For those of you who had your inventory wiped, they're working on restorations right now, so you're going to have all of those items back, and we'll talk about that time frame. Then we have the largest piece of this entire patch notes bundle, and that is rebalancing of certain skills. We're going to be going through what skills are getting hit with the nerf bat, if any. Maybe they're just getting rebalanced, but we'll go through it together. And then we're talking about multiplayer stability and connection to make sure that people can play together, and they're going to give us the backstory on what happened with all of the servers. So I'm just going to read through these patch notes for you guys, provide input where I can, but this is exciting times. Hopefully there's a lot of really cool stuff packed in here. Let's go ahead and let's get started. So right now, as of today, the deployment of this patch is scheduled for next week. They're going to use this week to identify as many severe issues as possible, fix them, and then thoroughly test the changes on all platforms. Now, they did mention the reason this patch is not going out this week or any earlier is because platform holders, Xbox, PlayStation, they have their certification process, and that adds time onto the overall process, and they said that's why they could not deploy this patch any earlier. They're doing their best to make sure they deliver a stable patch, and they're going to try to get it out before that date, but at this time they do not have a set in stone release date because of those certification processes. So let's go ahead and jump in, starting with the PC and console platforms. Now, the first big thing they talk about is they've improved overall stability for matchmaking. So for those of you who are having issues there, we should see some big improvements. The next thing, they fixed a bunch of crashes, a multiplayer crash that could result in client players having their inventory wiped. They did fix that, and like I said, they're working on restorations right now. They fixed the quest A Bad Day. They also fixed the crash that occurs in no man's land when your language is set to Spanish. They also fixed crash on launch issues, and they included many more random crash fixes, so they're very confident that these fixes will address the majority of crashes reported because they were able to trace down a lot of these crashes to a handful of root causes, but those crashes would appear in different places. So that is something positive coming out of this. There were only a handful of those root issues. They also fixed the HUD disappearing in certain cases. They fixed some bugs that are interfering with players respawning. They fixed bugs with players getting stuck on geometry, including when using gravity leap or falling out of the world. And they changed the default matchmaking setting from open to closed. So you'll still be able to manually change this to open through your game settings, but this change is going to prevent players from joining games where the host didn't intend to play in multiplayer. It's also going to cut down AFK lobbies, which is going to improve matchmaking overall. This should also help improve matchmaking times, as the queues will be less likely to be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of constant matchmaking requests generated by the open games. And this is also something that I experienced. I was recording some gameplay, I was trying to create a video, and next thing I know, somebody's in my game because I forgot to change it from open to closed. And I understand that's on me, but it was a bit frustrating when you're right in the middle of a really good kind of footage reel, and next thing you know, somebody pops up and just like comes in like John Wick style, guns blazing, blowing things up. And you're like, all right, well, you know, I was trying to show this mod and how it worked, but yeah, I mean, screw it. I guess I'll just go through and blast through this expedition now. So this is a good change. I like it, and I think it's going to help in the long run. So PC specific, they did fix a performance issue where the GPU was not being fully utilized. A lot of people were talking about on Twitter, hey, why is my GPU at 0%? Why is my GPU only at 10%? So if that's something you encountered, a fix is on the way. They did mention they're also working on other additional fixes and changes. So next up, they talk about the appreciation package. Really, they go into, we worked on Outriders for more than 5 years. We're very disappointed that launch weekend did not go as planned due to all the connectivity issues and crashes, and it really just was not a smooth experience. So throughout all of this, they really appreciate all of the messages of support and encouragement, and they really helped everyone power through and improve the situation. Because as you guys know, friendship is the true end game. Anyway, so they would like to thank everyone, and they're going to be giving us an appreciation package. So all players who played between March 31st and April 11th are eligible. Any players outside of the window, but for whom we have performed an automatic inventory wipe restoration, are also eligible. If you lost your stuff and they restored it, congratulations, you get this as well. Here's what you're going to get. Your highest leveled character will receive a level appropriate legendary weapon, a level appropriate amount of titanium, and the emote Frustration, which is otherwise unattainable at this moment in time. The irony here was not intentional, but it's also very fitting. So that's what we're going to be looking at, guys. A legendary weapon, a ton of titanium, and a new emote that only us who survived launch week, who were frustrated, battled through, but kept supporting the game, will earn that Frustration emote. I think this is a really good way for the developers to thank us, you know, kind of going through, battling through the whole launch weekend with them and kind of sticking there, helping provide, you know, input, crash reports, all that fun stuff. I like when devs do this. Now, I swear, if I get my level appropriate legendary weapon and it is a migraine SMG, I am going to lose my mind because I've gotten so many of those. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they put something in where it's like you won't get a duplicate. You'll get something new that goes to your character, something you don't have yet. So hopefully, but who knows? We'll see. They said they're still determining when the appreciation package will be delivered, but after looking at the content, I don't really think this is going to be too difficult to kind of drum up and then send out to everybody. So let's talk about inventory wipes and restoration. Now, they believe that the rate of this bug appearing should be greatly reduced once the upcoming patch has been published. They have their crash fixes in place. They're going to run a one-off mass restoration for everybody who's been affected. And here are the restoration details. So the restoration should take place on a specific day, and it's going to be a one-time event, just like in the demo. Now, the exact day is to be decided, but they're hoping for this to occur in the coming weeks. They're going to update you when they have a confirmation of the date and the timings. They will only be able to restore the most valuable tiers of items lost, aka epics and legendaries. They will be unlikely to restore an inventory full of blue gear, which honestly doesn't really matter, I don't think. I mean, blue gear you throw a rock and you hit 3. The epics and the legendaries are the things that you really care about, in my opinion. So the restoration will be additive to your inventory. It should not replace your current inventory, so don't kind of freak out. It's not going to override anything. But here is the drawback. Restored items may not have the exact same stats as the lost items. So if you have a rolled epic that was long range damage, close range damage, plus cooldown reduction, it might not have that. It might come back with weapon leech, skill leech, cooldown reduction, or something similar. So brace yourself for that. Now, obviously, legendaries are going to come back the exact same because legendaries are all static. Now, they did put a note in here. Note that restoration will not be possible for items that were acquired, but where the game connection was terminated before an autosave could complete, because those items never made it to the server inventory or our logs. AKA, if you were in an autosaving state and your game crashed, that data is lost. It is gone, 100% just gone. So you will not have that, so please keep that in mind. However, everything else should come back just fine. Now, on the flip side of the whole inventory wipe situation, they're also looking into the accolades wipe issue. Right now, their focus is whether or not they will be able to perform a one-off restoration or whether they will need to tackle these cases on a one-to-one basis. Reason being, accolades are a much more complex piece of data per profile than a piece of equipment, so working through isolation is taking a little bit more time. I really appreciate them being transparent as per usual. So for those of you out there who lost all of your accolades, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know when that tunnel is going to be over. Okay, so let's get to the big chunks, the rebalancing piece. Okay, so I'm going to read through this very word for word because I don't want anything to get misconstrued or people to be confused about what's going to be changing. So this rebalancing work can be implemented through backend updates. It does not require a patch, and this will be run during today's maintenance window. This rebalancing will happen today. So they kick things off with some general balance notes. First off, the Historian, Bounty Hunt, and Monster Hunt quests will no longer grant legendary items for each subsequent completion. This was a big issue. People could rerun the Historian quests, the bounties, and the Monster Hunts, and they basically could just grind out legendary gear guaranteed. So this was a big thing. I'll take down my guaranteed legendary video now, as well as a bunch of other creators, but I think this is the right move. It's something that wasn't really intended to be there to begin with. And to rub salt in the wound, if you played in a multiplayer setting, you could turn in all of your hunts in the multiplayer session and get 10 legendaries at once. So crazy stuff there, but that's no longer going to be possible. They also adjusted loot on specific enemies. The Tuka Beast, Split Tooth, Sand Shifter, and Cold Claw. These particular beasts are being too generous considering the required effort to take them down. In other words, they're no longer a worthwhile farm. They're not going to drop as much loot or as high of a rarity. So keep that in mind. These no longer work. Don't waste your time. Next thing is Chem Plant. Expedition time for gold, silver, and bronze was adjusted to 650, 1150, and 1500 seconds. Previously, it was 957, 1303, and 1650. Now, this is a big deal. This is a very big deal. Reason being is because Chem Plant was extremely simple to go through in gold, and it was a great one to go and farm. I mean, I would finish the whole thing and have a ton of time left over in gold. So this was my go-to. It helped me burn through a bunch of challenge tiers very quickly. Boomtown, same thing's going to be happening. It's going to drop to 390, 589, and 776 seconds. Previously, it was 422, 607, and 792. They go on to say that expeditions were being too generous in the required completion times when compared to others, and they want to avoid such disappropriate discrepancies, as we believe making all expeditions viable leads to a more diverse and thus interesting endgame. Next thing, crit rating damage multiplier on the tactical assault rifle is reduced to 165%. Previously, it was 175%. So that's going to start chipping away a little bit at the tactical assault rifle being such an overpowered weapon compared to literally everything else. Then you have the critical rating damage multiplier on the marksman rifle reduced to 250%. Previously it was 300%. Kind of the same thing here, making sure that other weapons have a little bit more viability than just rolling with those two. They also changed the duration of the massacre AP buff and reduced it to 3 seconds. This is a temporary measure until we have fixed the issue with the stacking cap. So for those of you who are rolling massacre for anomaly power, getting over 1,000,000 anomaly power to pump out some tool of destruction damage, that is no longer possible. Those builds are officially dead. Okay, so let's move into the big one, okay? The big one, that's the Twisted rounds, Blighted rounds, Volcanic rounds. So while we fully intended to provide the overpowered feeling for the best builds out there, we are also committed to making sure that there is build diversity. Late in the demo lifecycle, they discovered a bug with regards to bullet augmentation abilities damage calculation formula. There you go. And while they fixed the bug, some unforeseen imbalances were introduced. This has led to bullet-based abilities vastly outperforming other skills, and the main problem with that is such bullet-based builds require much less investment to make them top tier compared to other builds. Basically, they're overpowered as hell. So to achieve this, they made a couple adjustments for the Trickster and Technomancer classes who benefit the most from their bullet abilities power. So here's what we got. The base cooldown of Twisted rounds has increased to 25 seconds. It was previously 16 seconds. They go through to talk about, while infinite uptime on bullets abilities was always our intention, it's intended to be high risk, high reward. However, given the current power of this skill, there was very little risk involved in this ability given its short cooldown, even when players fail to trigger ammo replenishment. Increasing its cooldown in combination with adjusting its damage should increase that risk and make this playstyle a more thrilling experience. Then we have the Trickster's Hero Tree nodes, Disruptive Firepower, Scion of Power, Outrider Executioner. All of these have had their power reduced to 35% from 50%, so a 15% reduction. Now the combination of Twisted rounds, increase of firepower on top of these multipliers provided a massive increase of damage dealt by this ability. So guess what? Boom, nerfed. The vulnerable status, power reduced to 15%. It was previously 25%, so enemies will no longer be as vulnerable as they were. So let's get into the Technomancer. So the Technomancer Hero Tree node, damage against poison has had its power reduced to 15%, previously it was 30%. So while the Technomancer's Blighted rounds do not provide any damage increase on their own other than ignoring armor, they do provide an excellent tool for spreading vulnerable and toxic, which in turn can scale out of proportion, so they went ahead and knocked that down a little bit. And then over in the Pyromancer tree, Trial of Ashes has been reduced to 15% extra damage, previously 30%. So guys, these are the major kind of rebalancing things for the bullet abilities. Overall, I think they're taking baby steps towards nerfing this, which is really good. They didn't take the axe and completely cut these things down at the knee. Instead, they went through and they tweaked a little bit. And then they're probably going to go back and tweak a little bit more. This is a much more effective way of doing things compared to other games that I've been a part of, like Wilson, for example. Wilson had an ability called Bleeding Edge, and it completely nuked everything that it touched. Wilson was like, whoa, our end game's basically gone. People are rolling Bleeding Edge. Let's take the axe, cut it right down, and guess what? No one wanted to play after that. They had their entire build, their entire kind of like fulfillment in the game completely wiped out. They didn't want to regrind anything, so they said, you know what? I'm done, and they moved on to other games. So right now, I think this is a reasonable approach. I don't think it's going to make a massive difference. Like if you had a Blighted Rounds build and you were doing CT 15, now you're knocked down to CT 8. I don't think we're gonna see that level of nerf, but I do think that you are going to struggle a little bit more, especially if you were somebody using the Massacre Anomaly Power buff, right? So something like that, that is going to completely just destroy your build. But for Blighted Rounds, Twisted Rounds, Volcanic Rounds, little nerfs here and there. We'll see how it turns out. Right now, I need to get back in the game and start testing those. So the last thing we talk about is multiplayer stability and connection. So co-op and multiplayer sessions are a separate matter from solo play connectivity. They proceed to talk about how it works, but really the value here is the upcoming patches should help alleviate crashes in multiplayer as well as improve stability and speed. Now, the last thing they talk about is what happened with the servers. Why did the servers completely suck? Well, I'm gonna give you guys the TLDR. If you want the full kind of nitty gritty details, it's out there in the Reddit post, which I've linked in the description. TLDR though, our team worked throughout the Easter weekend and around the clock to resolve the server issues players were experiencing. We completely understand how frustrating this experience must have been, especially given the huge amount of players eagerly anticipating the launch. We had enough server scaling and capacity, but our externally hosted database was seeing issues that only appeared at extreme loads. So again, they really kind of embrace that full transparency position, which I really like. If you guys want to learn more about that, go ahead and jump out into that Reddit post. But all in all, guys, I think this is a really good first patch. It addresses some of those overpowered abilities. It's hopefully going to create a little more build diversity. I'm not entirely certain how much I love the Chem Plant and Boomtown nerfs to the completion times, but we'll see how that plays out. But the restoration stuff, the stability, the multiplayer, the crash fixes, all of that, they're doing all of that in an extremely quick fashion, which I love, and I think it's going to set the tone throughout the lifespan of this game. But let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think so far about this patch? Is it something you guys are excited for? Are you pumped up to see bullet builds getting some nerfs? Let me know, but as always, thank you guys for the support. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you next time.